And so, just to segue a little bit into the rituals that I create, is I do use a lot of Waldorf just means like really organic, like wax candle making and crystals and stones, all the treasures that children love. And then I use some shamanism too, like I say a beautiful prayer beforehand, but what it's really all about is that the ritual's very individualized. It's centered around what that celebration or that sad event or whatever. I've done rituals where a 5-year-old, I think Luke was 5. Yeah, he had a new sister. The mom was pregnant and he was really excited, but he was really worried, like how life is going to change. I had another little girl who had problems leaving her mom, the attachment thing, and I am not a child psychologist, I just wanna say that this is all spiritual, intuitive work, but just to create a sacred space and to light a candle and to talk about that which is going on, and then in my little ritual box, I love putting these together because there are things that the kids love, let's say Luke loved soccer, or let's say Luke loved he brought his stuffy muffy or whatever, and so you bring that all together, and each item in the box is a symbol, for love, connection, um, all of that sort of thing. But it it's just been beautiful for the ones that I've done, but what's even more important than that probably is that then I do this really nice felt thing where you can put the ritual on an altar. Some people don't like the word altar, you can put it wherever you want,
It's
but, I mean, a grandma called me the other day, she did a little ritual, I sent her a box, it's a good friend of mine. And she called me, cried. She goes, "Oh my gosh." Her granddaughter had called her from afar and just said, "Grammy, I miss you. Let's get our crystals so we can talk from the heart." And they both ran and got their crystals and just put them to their heart. And this isn't crystal woo-woo stuff. This is just like a beautiful amethyst that,
yeah.
that you can feel the love between the 2 of you. So it's creating those kinds of connections so children really do know that they are deeply loved and that it's a reminder to us to deeply listen
Mhm.
and to stop in our tracks when a child really needs us. So that's why I created my little ritual project.
Well, I think that is so important. I think about our culture is so lacking in ritual, in rites of passage.
Mhm.
And I even think
Yes.
about how I grew up myself. When traumatic things happened, we just kind of went on to the next thing. And maybe
Right.
there was a little bit of, oh, poor Carol, but then we kind of go on to the next thing. And so, as a child, you're kind of left with a wound, a wound. So that would be like a trauma point, I think, because you weren't
Yeah.
listened to, you weren't felt, understood. And I think it's so interesting to think that just lighting a candle, just being acknowledged, little one, I understand how I don't understand. Right now, you are going through something that you're experiencing, and let's light a candle for that, and let's
Right,
hear
right.
your feelings, and then creating anything around these points where we have a shift in our feelings, or we're growing up, or we're feeling like we're missing something. I love the story of the crystal and the grandma. I mean, how sweet is that?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, how do we get ritual back in our world? Because I think that it's one of the things that causes some of the chaos we're in, because all of us are little children who
Mhm.
were never heard at some point or didn't ritualize events in our lives. So I'm just kind of wondering, and maybe you're the one to write this write a book about rituals for children, or helping adults to ritualize their own lives. So what are your thoughts on how we can reinstate this in our world?
Yeah. Well, I have been recording the rituals I've been doing, and I kinda have a book in the back of my mind, but I don't know if I'll do that or not, but I think it would be helpful. It begins really with a shift in I hate to say our parenting, but just slowing down,
Mhm.
And everybody's heard this. I know everybody's tired of hearing this, but it all begins with us, the caregivers of these little ones. And so they can see us meditate. Because what I also meditate and other things, but, we have to help them develop an inner strength. And the rituals are usually for pretty young kids where they're still connected to the source. As Wayne
Mhm.
Dyer says, they still have droplets of heaven clinging to them. I just love that.
So
Um, but so then they have these resources where they can go within themselves. And when I say within themselves, to also be able to get quiet, to listen to their intuition and to know that there's something bigger than themselves that
Mhm.
will help them. And so whether you say parents or caregivers, and honestly, I'm thinking about mostly doing I already have a name for it, it's called grandmother's footprints, that this is such a great thing for grandparents, and I'll say grandmas just because I can. No, no, grandparents, because they have the time and the energy and they want, they just definitely so to draw from that wisdom down to the innocence of the young children wisdom, so, really, how do we bring ritual back? We just try to get the message out there, a reminder that we're not listening and we need to help these little ones develop this inner strength. And so bringing it into our own lives. And anybody that's watching this podcast is probably already doing this, but, just the tiny things that a child sees you reading your I am book or the Bible or whatever, whatever you might the archangels, which I'm like reading about the archangels right now. I never grew up with that, but I love it. And just, pulling a tarot card, having some crystals, just having that energy so children can see that and then bringing it into the family. That's a big I think the world is changing. Don't you think the world is changing a little bit more towards that, or have I just been in this field too long?
I I think personally, I think that there's kind of a divergence. I think that
Right.
there's a big awakening going on, and many people are getting closer to source uh, and evolving spiritually, and I think that others are really getting trapped in the ego layers. And for me, I see
Yes.
this divergence happening. So you're just probably focusing on on the timeline that I'm seeing
Yeah, the
where
good
this
part. Yeah,
evolution.
I've
Yeah.
been
I had a really
yeah,
interesting
you did.
podcast interview with, Dr. Edith Mbutu Chan, and she does all this alternative education for children. She calls them,
Mhm.
what are they? She doesn't call them crystal children. But anyway, she talks about how the
Indigo?
children are being no, she doesn't say indigo, she's got another term for it, but the point is
Yeah,
that there are a lot of children, a lot of souls coming onto the planet that are lighter,
exactly.
that are shining more light, and so she says, as other podcast guests I've talked to, that some of the, quote, "evil" that we see in the world is more obvious because there's more light on the planet, and these children are bringing
Yeah,
this light. And so it's very, very, very hopeful. And I do think it's
right.
our job as adults, for those of us that are at least connected enough to our own inner child that we can do this work, that we can hold that space for them and so that they can grow up and really shine their light because they have a huge contribution, I think, to give to the world. But I also see these
Mhm.
rituals, and I also see that most people are very, very, very disconnected from their inner child. So they've experienced these trauma points. And for example, I have examples in my life where there was a break in belonging. My cat was run over or poisoned or some things like that happened, and my world didn't pause and hold that in a ritual state. So that child within me is still kind of wanting that ritual. So I'm actually thinking we can do this for our own
Yeah,
selves as well, that we can create this ritual for our
absolutely.
inner children. Yeah.